Hey guys, so massive implications for what this chapter in Law's last words to Big Mom mean aside, I'm actually a little bit more mixed on this chapter than you'd think. But starting right out of the gate what what I'd like, I when I first read this chapter, I was kind of a little iffy on the fact that Big Mom had still survived, but rereading it several times, it does make in-universe sense that Law's aftershock technique wouldn't actually defeat Big Mom, as in retrospect, when looking back on when Oda had Law utilize it against Doflamingo, it's weirdly it's weirdly presented as only ever one of those techniques that seems to really severely weaken an opponent, especially ones who are stronger than Law. But but the technique itself doesn't have the strength to actually deliver that final defeating killing blow to people. So in that regard, it not only makes sense that it would be used as a means to ensure that Big Mom was weak enough to where Law and Kid could deliver the killing blow using their awakenings, but in context of Law's previous comment of only having enough control over his awakening for it to be a one-shot, again, it wouldn't be necessary for Big Mom to be as weakened as humanly possible in order for Law to like pull off his awakening in the way he did. And yeah, let's get into the big thing, which is Law's words about Big Mom's era coming to an end, which honestly really does like full on full on like go like just full on forcefully like push it in our faces that no matter what happens beyond this point, the old guard of the Yonko is coming to a close after this. And it isn't the what really makes Law's words even more epic. It isn't something out of nowhere either. It's a thread that started with Whitebeard's death, continued on after Luffy was labeled the Fifth Emperor, and more or less confirmed once we learned Shanks had only been a Yonko for 6 years. Like hell, even pretty much knowing Navy HQ moved to the New World to better combat the Yonko is proof of that in itself. That yeah, Big Mom, Kaido's eras, whether or not Kaido actually lives beyond lives to see his whole massive world war become a thing or not, the old era of the Yonko is done. Like it's no more, and it's based again. Everything just when you bring everything like that together, it just goes to prove that it's just further proof that like that all these little things are like proof that yeah, this whole era, a new era is dawning, and the old era is just coming to an end now. Now with Now, all this sounds amazing. So, where does my problem stem from this? Well, the root of my issues are oddly enough pacing. This is one of those odd chapters where everything about it, as I've laid out, is amazing and great. But weirdly enough, it also feels like Oda stretched this fight out to fit the entire chapter, just so Law could deliver that line as an ending quote for the chapter. Like, it's weird to say, but it's almost one of those things where it didn't feel like the fight needed to make up the entire chapter and could have ended sooner. But again, reading it again and knowing Oda and how meticulous the man can be, it does make sense why he would focus on every little detail, and I'll give him credit for. And I'll give him credit for in the end kind of respecting Big Mom's strength as Yonko by having Law and Kid even having to resort to using such drastic measures to defeat her, and even more so, especially with allowing Kid to get the final shot in, knowing the grudge he's had against Big Mom, like for so long, like it made her defeat all the more satisfying to see. Like it like all that is great, but it's kind of weirdly just one of those things where pacing just felt very off in this chapter. I can't describe it fully to you, and like just something about the pacing just didn't add up. I don't know. It's hard to describe. In between all that though, we do see what's going on with Yamato and Momonosuke, and even though Momonosuke is still doing everything he can to keep Onimusha afloat, I think that whole Law created did did a couple things without him realizing it. One is that I think it might have actually stopped Onegashima's advance. Whether like I like we've been kind of, the one thing Oda's been building up upon is just the constant is just Momonosuke's constant attempts in order to use his flames in order to keep Onigashima afloat. And he has done and Momonosuke at this point has done a very good job at that. But he hasn't necessarily stopped it from actually advancing. And I think that's what Law has now done with his use of the with his use of the with his use of his awakening. Is I think just that whole like line of just that whole technique in itself, I think it basically it just kind of it provided a good weighted stopping point in order for Onigashima to kind of like maybe stop to a halt. Now whether Onigashima has stopped its advance temporarily or permanently is the bigger question, because if Kaido does learn that the island stop moving, he could get angry enough at the fact that his plan was stopped to just go absolutely nuclear, and this could lead into that. But even more than that, the fact that Law's technique also pierced through a small part of Wano does make me wonder how exactly that's going to play into the whole thing of Kaido nuking the Flower Capital, because Oda is so meticulous in how he approaches things that he wouldn't have focused on that crater of a hole that Law created if he didn't have a plan for it. And thing is, I think I know what he's doing now, which is like the Flower Capital is gonzo. Like the fate of the Flower Capital at this point is already set in stone. Like Kaido has to destroy it at this point. But the thing is, that never answered the question of what's going to happen to the people themselves. And while I don't deny that I think Oda isn't going to shy away from showing people die, I think that crater that Law blasted open might, and this is a big might, provide a bit of a means to kind of shield the citizens from the blast. Like, I have this kind of thing in my head where I'm thinking, is Oda just going to let every one of the citizens in the Flower Capital die? And honestly, I don't believe he is. I think Oda would at least provide enough time in order for an evacuation. I think Oda would provide at least enough time for an evacuation attempt to be attempted. But I think there is going to be at least a chunk of people in the Wano capital who are going to get out of this alive. But there are still going to be, and I think the lucky few who do survive are going to use that crater as a means to kind of in order to shield themselves from the blast. But those that don't make it in time are still going to die. Like I'm kind of thinking in my head how when we finally do get to that point, how it's going to be plotted out. And I think again with Law blasting that hole open, I think we just got another piece of the puzzle to that, I think. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and on this Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.